Hey. Hello, everyone. Thank you for choosing, thank you for choosing to watch me today. But thank you for joining me also on this episode of Office Hours with Lanora. Office Hours with Lanora was created for 3 reasons. The first point or reason was to help anyone who is interested in learning about their options and obtaining a real estate career get that information. The second reason was for anyone currently pursuing a class or who have started a class, pass that class and their licensing exam on a first attempt. And the third and final reason for Office Hours with Lanora is for anyone that has already began a career in real estate, stay in real estate. So I thank you for joining me on this episode of Office Hours with Lanora. Today, we will discuss how I passed my licensing exam on the first attempt, one and only, okay? So before we get into how I did that, I'll first explain that I've been in the real estate industry in some capacity or another for roughly almost 20 years. I earned a real estate license 20 years ago, and I passed that licensing exam using these same steps on a first attempt. One attempt, one try, and done. Then in 2008, 2009, with the real estate debacle that occurred, as well as just some personal changes in my life, unfortunately, I had to let my real estate license lapse, meaning that I did not renew it. It expired, and I had to find a full-time job and start working to support my family. Ultimately, my goal was to get my real estate license back, and I did that. I did it last year, July of last year. I did a video and a Facebook just letting you guys know that I had earned my real estate license back. Now, because I have a real estate license and I work for the Chicago Association of Realtors, I am not allowed to use said real estate license, but I reached my goal in earning that license again. And I want to share those tips and tricks that I've been using and telling people about over 20 years that has worked, time tested and true. It has worked. So let me first start by saying, if you are currently in a real estate pre-licensing course, you or anyone else or someone you may know, the very first thing that I want you to do to help you successfully pass your real estate licensing exam is to create the IL number that your school will need. Over at the Realtors Real Estate School, we use, and all other schools across the state and national as a whole, we use the IL number that you're going to be creating with our proctor for the state, AMP/PSI. You'll go to their website to create a unique number that's going to identify you as a tester. That number is what the school uses instead of your social security number. We use that IL number to communicate with the proctor for the state to let them know that you have completed your pre-licensing course and you're ready to take your exam, okay? So we report your 60-hour and 15-hour for brokers. We report the 15 hours for the residential leasing agent. We report the 30-hour and 15-hour course if you are taking the managing broker pre-licensing course. So that's step number 1. Make sure you create your IL number. What I do notice is students try to skip this step and then call AMP to schedule their exam, and then they get frustrated because none of your information is there. Start with the number and make sure that your school has it. The second thing that I will tell you is to be really, really good. Be a sponge in your pre-licensing course, whether you're doing that online, via Zoom, with a live instructor or a self-study course. It's up to you to be the sponge, to soak it all in, to take it all in, to do it in a timely fashion. I know at the Realtors Real Estate School, we do give our courses can range between 2 weeks and up to 6 weeks. 2 weeks and up to 6 months. 2 weeks and up to 6 months. 6 months is a lot of time to be taking towards studying 75 hours. So my suggestion is try to remain within that 1 to 2 month range. 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months max when you're studying for and preparing and finishing up your pre-licensing course. Once we start going to the 3rd month, the 4th month, the 5th month, the 6th month, you run the chance of forgetting and not retaining the information very well, okay? So usually 2 weeks to about 2 months is that sweet spot that you should be taking and completing a pre-licensing course. The next thing you want to do is, after you successfully completed your pre-licensing course, give the school about 24 to 48 business hours to report your completion over to the proctor for the state. And after that 24 to 48 business hours, schedule a licensing exam within 2 weeks of you finishing your course. So 24 to 48 hours, give the school time to send over the proof. And then within 2 weeks of you finishing that class, that last class you took, schedule your first exam. Here's why I want you to do that. It's still fresh in your head. So let's say that you waited 2 years in some cases, as people are doing. You've probably forgotten everything that you learned. But if you would schedule this exam within 2 weeks of you finishing the course, chances are you've retained enough of it. Plus, you've been studying up until the point of you taking the licensing exam. You're probably going to be a more effective test taker versus someone waiting 2 months, 3 months, or 2 years. Your transcript is only valid for 2 years. You get 4 attempts at the test. So even if you bomb on the first attempt, you have 3 more. The reason why I suggest, as well as my school suggests, that you take your licensing exam within 2 weeks of you finishing the course, statistics show that you're likely to do better at it. But at the same time, you're going to get exposed to what it feels like walking into that testing center, what it feels like in terms of the types of questions that you'll be presented with. If your fear is in taking the test, pay $55 or $35 to get a crash course and a good feel, or a behind the wheels attempt at this test. And then if you don't do well on the first attempt, do your best on that second attempt, okay? Next, I want you to also consider when you are scheduling your exam, if you are someone that may need accommodations. Perhaps there is some form of a disability that you have, or even you might, need to have a quiet room or somebody to read to you, or a magnifier, or some sensory issues may prevent you from being in the testing center with a bunch of people. You need to let the proctor of the state know this in advance. So you cannot schedule your appointment and then say, oh, I need additional time on my test. When you get to the testing center, it's too late. So you want to schedule, if you have special needs or accommodations, even before you pay your money to schedule the exam. Let the proctor of the state know, hey, I have proof that I have a special accommodation request. I filled out the paperwork. Here it is. Where do I send it? How do I schedule my exam at that point? Okay. This is a good way to make sure that you're not having those nervous jitters and all manic when you go take your actual licensing exam, because you're doing the preliminary work. Let's also talk about what's the most productive time of the day for you, because the most productive that time of the day that you're at your best is when I want you to schedule your exam. I am at my best first thing in the morning, or that sweet spot for me is like late morning, mid-afternoon. So usually I'll schedule an exam right at the 9 o'clock hour, or about 11, or between 11 and 12. I know that I'm productive. I'm up. My energy is high. I've calmed myself down. I'm ready to work. And that's when I schedule my exam. So you schedule your exam for what you deem to be the most productive time of the day for you. Let's talk about what I want you to use. I'm just going to put up a picture of what I'm talking about. This is a book. It's the Candidate Handbook that's provided by PSI, which is the designated proctor for the state. I'll put it up, make sure everybody, just in case somebody wants to take a picture. The Candidate Handbook is what I call the Bible for real estate. In the Candidate Handbook, you're going to learn about those accommodation requests. You're going to learn about how much time you'll have, how many questions you'll have to answer to complete this type of exam. You'll learn that the broker pre-licensing students will get 3.5 hours to answer 145 multiple choice questions. The leasing students will get 55 multiple choice questions, and they'll get 2 hours to answer their questions. The managing broker students will get 50 multiple choice questions, which will include simulations, and they'll get 4 hours to answer. Yeah, a lot of questions. So that's what you need to know so that you're preparing your mindset. The mind is the most important vehicle that you're going to be using to get you where you need to go. So using that mind in the pre-licensing course. Also using that mind, hold on you guys, because I'm using that mind in the pre-licensing course, using that mind to prepare yourself for your exam, and also using that mind to regurgitate those answers back in the form of the exam is going to help you be successful. Let's talk about what you do prior to actually taking the exam. The night before, I want you to get a good meal in, get some good sleep. The morning of, I do not want you to start cramming. As a matter of fact, I encourage students, don't even open your book, because my trick is 4 o'clock, 4 p.m., the day before, I'm done studying. I'm done. If I don't know it by 4 p.m. the day before, and I'll usually take the day off of work just so that I can be in tune with my studying and not doing anything else but that. But for me, 4 p.m. is that cutoff date, that cutoff time. If I don't know it by 4 p.m. the day before, guess what? I'm not going to know it the morning of the test. And I'm not going to put all of that pressure on myself by getting up trying to study, and now I'm nervous testing. I'm stress testing. Don't do that to yourself. You'll fail every time. Another thing that I'm going to recommend that you do, like I did, I studied for my exam. So as soon as I finished with the course, I scheduled my exam, and then I gave myself that 2-week window to take the actual licensing exam test. So in those 2 weeks, I'm studying every day. 30 minutes to upwards of 2 hours or more, I'm in front of my coursework. I'm not guessing. I'm doing an effective way and a proficient way of studying, because remember the Bible I told you about. In the Candidate Handbook, there is an outline for each one of the tests. There is an outline for the broker exam, state and national. There is an outline for the leasing agents, state and national. So what I'm holding up in front of us now, in front of the camera, is the national portion of the broker exam. This outline tells you how many questions you're going to get from a particular section, okay? And where those questions are coming from. So I get some students that say, Miss Lanora, I'm just reading. I'm just going to read the whole book over again. No, you're not. Don't do that. I want you to use the outline that you'll find, which for the national, and then this is the state portion outline. And it tells you, for example, I know that a portion of the state exam is going to be based on disclosures. So the disclosures, I'll get questions about agency, about advertising, about property disclosures. All of those can be potential testable areas for the exam. Why would you blanketly just keep reading the book, hoping that something saturates and sticks, and then when you go take the test, you're completely thrown off because you don't remember what you just read? This is a better way. If you do nothing else, use the outline that's provided for free through the proctor for the state. Now, I also use study aids. For me, I use Exam Smart. So www.examsmart.com. I also used Real Estate Exam Pro, so www.realestateexampro.com. There is CompuCram, www.compUcram.com. Those are highly effective study aids that you can use to help prepare for a licensing exam. How I use study aids to help me prepare, I took one comprehensive exam to see where I was or how I scored a whole exam. And then based on what that exam told me, hey, Lanora, you're struggling in contracts. So at that point, I began to use contracts. Give me 1 second here. 1 second. I began to focus and study on contracts only. So I then took a second test. I went back because the first test was comprehensive. The other areas that I struggled on, I just honed in on those particular areas. So if contracts was an area that I struggled in, then I stayed in the contracts area and beefed up that area to make sure that when I took the test again for the second time, a comprehensive exam, my score should have risen because I studied and I made sure I honed in on the areas that I was struggling in, okay? Another thing that I want us to do is when you need to show up 15 to 20 minutes before your test. Show up so that you're not nervous, you're not stressing. Somebody in the parking lot flipped you the bird because you parked too close to their car, or whatever the case may be. You need to be relaxed as possible. So if the folks in your house wake up the morning of your exam and they're fussing and screaming and going crazy or whatever, you need to let them know, I got to go take this exam because this could potentially change our future. I need you guys to be quiet. I need you guys to support me in this journey so that when I go take this exam, I am stress-free. Okay? Let's talk about the exam itself. You're going to be in front of a computer. So if you're not good at using a computer, you need to start practicing now. Get used to clicking that mouse, do some simulation exams to help you so that you're not panicking when you're taking the test. There's going to be a timer for your exam. I turn mine off because I don't need to see the time. That stresses me out to see that time is clicking down. If you need to see the time, leave it on. Leave it on. What I recommend that you do first, and you guys might want to listen to this one right here, because the best way to pass this exam, I'm about to give it to you right now. You need to read the last sentence first. So read the question, but start with that last sentence first. And I'll give a good example that I give to other students. It's not real estate related. So don't say, Lanora, this didn't have anything to do with real estate. It's visual. Picture this. The question is, Lanora has 4 bananas, 2 apples, and a pear. Robert has 3 oranges, 2 bananas, and a pint of strawberries. Peter has 16 apples, 4 pears, 2 oranges, and a pint of strawberries. How many apples does the group have? Well, no one has apples but Peter. So that's why you want to read that last question first, because if I've read that last question first, by the time I go through the question, I'm only looking for apples. Get it? That's my trick for every pre-licensing, post-licensing, or any real estate test that I take. I always start with that last sentence first, because now I eliminate a bunch of the fluff that can be in some of these questions that you'll find on your test, okay? There is a 50-50 chance in terms of it being a multiple choice question. All of the questions are multiple choice on the exam, but you have a 50-50 chance of selecting the right one if you've been effectively studying by using your outline, putting 30 minutes to 2+ hours a day behind studying, and then being relaxed. So when you sit in front of that computer, 2 of those answers automatically are wrong. You get 4 answers. 2 of them are wrong. You can just pick those right out. You should be able to. The third answer, it's close. It looks like it could be right, especially with the math problem. But that fourth answer, in no specific order, can be that right answer for you. With the math problems, remember, like with transfer stamps, you're going to get the answer that if you did not round up and the answer if you round up. The answer or the correct answer is the one that you round up for transfer stamps. I just gave you the right answer for another test question. So don't look. If your calculator comes up with this answer and you need to round up to get the right answer for the exam related to transfer stamps, okay? Last sentence first, remember to round up when you're marking your questions, because some students like to mark a question to come back to it. I don't recommend that. And the reason why I don't recommend it is because I want your first answer to be your best answer. And your best answer is the one that you've thought about it, you spent enough time with it, you moved on from it. If you have to mark a question to review after you've gotten through all of the other questions, pay attention to your time. Pay attention to your time, because what happens if you can't go back to that question and you've marked it for review and you didn't answer it? You only get scored for the questions that you answered. So at the end, if you see that clock ticking and you know that you have not answered all of your questions, there is nothing wrong with you guessing, because you could potentially guess a right answer. But if you have enough time, sit with that question. The maximum time that I would say that you sit with the question is about a minute to a minute and a half. If you can't get that answer within a minute and a half, mark it for review, move on. But if you're finding that you're marking every question for review later, something's wrong. You're not prepared for this test, okay? Those are some of my tricks, some techniques that I've used to help prepare and pass on a first attempt my licensing exam. I'm forever a learner. I'm the biggest nerd probably that you'll ever get to know. But I got a social life and all that other stuff too. But I take seriously my education, and so should you. So take the time. Your biggest asset is effectively studying and allotting the correct amount of time to do it. Take your test right away within 2 weeks of you finishing your pre-licensing course. Make sure you're relaxed. Don't get up cramming the morning of. Don't mark answers and then run out of time at the end. Don't guess unless you are running out of time. Spend time with the question. But the most important thing is make sure you have talked to your higher power and ask permission to pass this test, because that's part of my business strategy, which is prayer. And I'm going to tell you, you should probably take that with you as well. I thank each and every one of you for joining me on this episode of Office Hours with Lanora. I'll put above the upcoming broker classes, residential leasing agent classes, as well as managing broker classes that'll be starting with us soon, some next week. So if you're interested, make sure you join right now. Ta-ta for now. Bye-bye.